We streaming? We are streaming. Hi, everybody. Well, you probably already saw the news. It was a little bit ago now. It's about 4 o'clock where I am, Mountain Standard Time, and the Fed at about 2:30 made their announcements of what they're going to do with interest rates. They're going to increase things by 75 basis points. Correct way to say that. Which is what everybody was basically expecting. So markets have responded relatively positively. Bitcoin is up 3.89% today. Ethereum up 4.78%. And my favorite microcap little itty bitty coin, Giddy, up 5.07% today. But you already know about that, right? Everybody's talking about what the Fed was going to announce. We were already planning on it. It was very publicized. Now I'm sure everybody has exhausted that topic. I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about kind of bigger picture things. I've seen a couple threads lately that are trying to call attention to, shall we say, a trend or a possibility. Bitcoin right now, $22,225. Great. And the S&P is up a little bit, up 1.46, and the NASDAQ is up 2.5. Great. I already talked about this. The real Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I never finished. I read a lot. I didn't finish this book. Didn't resonate with me the way it did with a lot of people. But he tweeted the other day, best investment cans of tuna fish. Inflation about to take off. Best investments are cans of tuna and baked beans. You can't eat gold, silver, or Bitcoin. You can eat cans of tuna and baked beans. Food, most important. Starvation, next problem. Invest in the solution. Take care. Is that a terrifying tweet? Oh, I'm not sharing that. Let me share my screen. Here we go. Now you can see what I'm talking about. Robert Kiyosaki, author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, advising people to buy cans of tuna and baked beans, which sounds incredibly grim. But I don't think what he's saying here is entirely unfounded and uncalled for. I certainly don't think it's a bad idea. Am I crazy? Does that make me crazy? Let me give you some background. I grew up in a very devout religious household, Mormon. And one thing that the Mormons are known for is food storage. Do you know this? Do you know this about your neighbor who's Mormon who has... I'll tell you what we had growing up. We had a staircase by our front entryway. And underneath the staircase, we kept two things. Shoes and cans of food. There were cans of wheat and cans of dry flaked mashed potatoes and probably a bunch of other things. In the 18 years that I lived in that house growing up, I never once saw that food pulled out and used. But it was shelf-stable food that we could keep there for a very, very, very long time in case there was some huge economic shock that prevented us from being able to buy food. Now, that never happened. I think my dad lost his job once while I was growing up. He was a lawyer. He was at one firm, lost his job when they made some catastrophic choices, and then worked at another firm for the rest of his career. We never were hungry. We were fine. That being said, I don't remember anything in the 80s or 90s, at least while I've been alive, that resembles what's happening today. The closest comparison people can make is from right before I was born, the late 70s and early 80s, 1980, when we had stagflation and Paul Volcker had to shock markets to pull in inflation, and the 1940s, which is way, way, way before my time. And I'm not even going to pretend to have a clear grasp on what the comparisons really are, what the nuances are. But suffice it to say that you have to go back a long ways to find a real macroeconomic comparison that even makes sense. So Robert Kiyosaki here saying buy cans of tuna fish and baked beans sounds grim, sounds potentially crazy to some people. It doesn't sound crazy to me. I think it's grounded, good common sense. Am I a crazy person? I might be. One year, my wife, for Christmas a few years ago, she got me a Doomsday Prepper themed Christmas. All of my gifts had to do with Doomsday prepping. She even got me a different stocking that was like Kevlar, tactical Christmas stocking. It was a good Christmas. I got Doomsday Preppers on DVD, multi-season set. Why do I think this is a good idea? Well, The possibility of a huge macroeconomic shock that could make food or other essentials difficult or radically too expensive, a few years ago that may have seemed nigh unto impossible. But come on, you remember 2020, you remember the pandemic, you remember the irrational moves that people made. You couldn't go out in public, you couldn't even go for a jog in California. Things were hard to get, and when you got them, you were terrified, right? So many people were terrified, like, let me disinfect every single thing that comes into my house. Let's read this tweet thread from Stack Hodler. Again, it's totally an anon on Twitter, but I think they make some good points. We're living through the biggest economic shock of our lifetimes in one of the most pivotal moments in human history. The rules of the game are to stay solvent and secure your Bitcoin in cold storage. Megathread on what you need to know to keep your cool through the chaos. Everything is breaking. Years of 0% interest rates encouraging everyone to take on cheap debt, corporations, countries, individuals, everyone. Most of the debt wasn't used productively, meaning most of it will never be paid off. And now that interest rates are rising, dumpster fire. See that? Good use of an emoji. Dumpster fire. Our current economic system requires more debt to survive. Just take a look at this graph and you'll see that the amount of debt only goes one direction. If we don't pile on more debt, the entire thing collapses, and that's what we're flirting with, systemic collapse. Now, can you even see that whole chart? Let me scroll up a bit. There we go. Look at that. Look at that. I was born right around here, early 80s. I can't highlight it for you, but early 80s, 1983. Look at the line after that. My entire life, it has been rising dramatically and even more so in recent years. This only goes up to 2020. It doesn't even factor in the stimulus that was sent out by the Biden administration in the midst of COVID. The money supply increased dramatically after this, since that. What is shown here ends, it gets even higher. Is that not a little terrifying? I think maybe it should be. I think it should be. Because it entails systemic collapse, right? If debt can only go in one direction, we got a problem. The amount of new debt required to keep things propped up is at truly silly levels, and the Fed is making one last attempt to deny reality by raising rates. But the only way to stop our momentum is to slam into a brick wall of economic pain, which is exactly what's happening. Now, this is from a few days ago. It's from before the Fed's events of today, their announcement of the 75 basis points interest rate increase. But this is a broad discussion. It's not like here and now, today, right now, this 24 hours. It's today, this era, our lifetime right now. Now, that word now could mean a number of different things depending on the duration that you're specifying. Now, I think in this context, talks about this decade, or maybe even a couple decades. We're seeing the chaos play out in all markets. Equities are tanking. Bond yields are surging. Currencies are plummeting versus USD. Bitcoin selling off. Altcoins evaporating. There are very few places to hide, and cash is being eaten by inflation at 8% plus. Here are some charts that illustrate how crazy things are getting. German 10-year yields just broke through a 4-decade-long trend line. The German economy is being crushed by inflation, but the EU can't raise rates without bankrupting Italy and Greece. The EU is trapped. A 4-decade-long trend. Again, we're talking about the last time we can compare macroeconomically to what's going on now is the late 70s, early 80s, before I was even born. So in my lifetime, this is unprecedented. We're breaking the line right there. Read this to understand why the EU is basically screwed. I'm not going to go into that right now, but point taken. The Japanese yen, the third largest currency in the world, is being destroyed by its central bank. The Bank of Japan is buying unlimited quantities of Japanese government bonds to prevent yields from going above 0.25. Why? Above 0.25 and the Japanese banking system implodes. So they are desperately trying to keep this up, but they might be running out of tools. That's the point here, right? That's what Stack Hodler and other doomsdayers would suggest, is that our centralized institutions like the central bank, the United States Federal Reserve and others, the central bank of the European Central Bank, the Japanese Central Bank, they're running out of tools. They're running out of ploys. They don't have any more tactics to try to kick the can down the road. They can't do it. There is an end game, right? Ultimately, it's going to stop working. It works until it doesn't. Hyperinflation happens slowly and then all at once. And what he's suggesting is the all at once will come. You can't say, oh, we'll never get there. We'll always be able to figure out how to stave that off. That's not true. You've heard me on this channel talk about Ray Dalio before, and most recently he's talked about the changing world order and how he thinks China and the renminbi is going to become the ascendant reserve currency of the world. Now, I take issue with that, but Dalio's premise that there is a change in the global regime every few hundred years and that national global reserve currencies switch from one to another, that's inarguable. That's clearly demonstrated by history. And the United States dollar has had that stage for a while. What is the lifespan of a fiat currency? Might be a couple hundred years. How long has the US dollar been around? Anyway, I'll continue with Stack Hodler. Watching the Bank of Japan destroy the yen offers a glimpse into the future of other major fiat currencies, including the US dollar. When the debt becomes too large, yield curve control and destruction of the currency become one of the only ways out. Dollar weakness versus the Russian ruble. Russia is done accepting cheap fiat for scarce goods. This severely limits the ability of central banks to kick the can by printing. Russia is calling the fiat bluff, and the implications are massive. Now, sanctions against Russia in the midst of the Ukraine war. Russia makes a lot of oil, exports a lot of oil. They also make potash, which is used as in agriculture, fertilizer. So we're expecting to see shocks, not only in oil, and we've already seen the price of gas go up, but in the price of food. Two things notably that are excluded from the inflation numbers, the official CPI. They don't include energy, they don't include food, because those are too volatile, you see. Well, geez, man, I guess I'll just stop buying energy and food. Me, a regular pleb. There are all kinds of ways they cook the numbers so that they can manage perceptions. And in a big way, it works. As perverse as that is, it works. People don't realize how ugly things are because they can kind of cook the books at the central bank. Back to the thread. Check out this thread if you want to understand why Russia demanding rubles is an existential threat to the current fiat system. This is something that I would like to understand better. The US dollar is the reserve currency, and oh, your mic volume is a bit low. Let me see. Let me see if I can turn it up. Stand by for 5 seconds, folks. I'm going to see if I can turn up system volume on the sound. Input volume. How about now? Is that better? I'll just do it a touch more. Let me know if that works a little bit better. Thank you for the feedback. Mike, feedback, get it? JK. Check out this thread if you want to understand why Russia demanding rubles is an existential threat to the current fiat system. To this point, nation states that want to do business with one another, want to trade with one another, they use primarily the US dollar. If that breaks down, the United States federal bank, the government, the United States as a nation, the US dollar, it's in trouble. That is something that gets defended severely, vehemently, using even the US military. And I, like everything else, I think there's an end game. They can't do that in perpetuity. You can't just try to defend that at all costs. Eventually, it's just not going to work. Corporate bonds are falling off a cliff as investors realize that a lot of companies won't be able to pay off their debt at higher interest rates. Companies that can't afford to refinance will need to lay off employees and liquidate assets, which is bad news for everyone. Let's take a quick peek at how mortgage-backed securities are holding up through all of this. Yikes! Fun fact, the Fed says they're going to sell some of the mortgage-backed securities that they bought during quantitative easing. Good luck. Prices are tanking. By now you get the point. The entire system is crumbling. Cracks are opening up and portfolios are tumbling to hell. And yet, what can the Fed do? With inflation absolutely crushing people, can they really reverse course and fire up the money printers again? Inflation is the real world with pressure applied by Russia. Inflation in the real world with pressure applied by Russia means we're now facing an impossible policy choice: mass default leading to systemic collapse or continuing down the path towards hyperinflation. And this finally brings me to Bitcoin and why I'm calmly stacking through the chaos. Let's be frank. The Bitcoin price is melting down. It's testing the low 20K range as Celsius blows up and altcoins head to zero, but the value prop of Bitcoin remains exactly the same. Everything that is playing out right now is why we've been stacking Bitcoin to begin with. The fiat system is falling apart, and we need a form of money that can be held safely outside the system without counterparty risk. I'm going to cut it short there and move on. You take the point. Stack Hodler makes the argument, and I tend to agree, that what we're seeing is not normal. It's not a regular part of cycles. It's systemic failure. It's cracks in the system that won't be able to be mended the way they might have in the past. Ultimately, they're kicking the can down the road, and ultimately they're going to have to face up to what kind of monetary system has been built, and there won't be any tools left. Now, I don't know when this all hits the fan. Could be years, could be over a decade. I don't know. I really don't. But things seem to be accelerating. It feels uncomfortable. And so somebody like Robert Kiyosaki saying have cans of food seems reasonable. Me, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I kind of just want a cabin in the woods. It's well stocked and has satellite internet, Starlink. That'd be nice. Away from a lot of people. Kim.com, founder of Mega Upload and Mega, he had a similar doomsday thread talking about how the US is going to have to default or print money like crazy. His is a lot more straightforward. Talks about the trillions of dollars of debt there are. It's repeating some of the same things. Like I said yesterday, the tone in the room, the topics that get brought up, the ideas that get repeated, these represent the zeitgeist, and it is actually information. Whether you believe it to be entirely factually correct or not is another point. The zeitgeist, the tone in the room, is information. It lends you some perspective on what other people are thinking. That matters. This is a tweet from Peru Goyle, Bitcoin since 2017, engineering lead at Kairos Power, ex-UC Berkeley. He says crypto, and this is crypto as distinct from Bitcoin, crypto has no product market fit and blockchains have no use case apart from money. Means everything is competing against Bitcoin and therefore cannot win. Sorry to break your bubble. He goes on, talks about how Cardano is not going to do it. And you know what? I'll just read it. Cardano is not going to solve Africa's financial infra, and XRP will not be used by banks for intra-bank transfers. You were sold a lie, and became exit liquidity to VCs and crypto influencers. Now do better. Oh, good. The sound is better. Now do better. Learn about Bitcoin and history of money and build your wealth again. The innovation in this entire space are the following: the proof of work algorithm, the difficulty adjustment, the native monetary unit that is able to endogenously emerge. Socially, the innovation is an immutable and uncheatable distributed ledger. Stop being sold on the idea of crypto, blockchain, Web3, and meta. Names change, but the Ponzi's remain the same. For the next stage of global adoption, this industry needs a massive purge and a learning cycle, and now is the best time. 99% of this pure garbage ain't coming back this time. As with so many things from Bitcoin maximalists, I tend to agree with this about 90%, but 90% is categorically different from an absolute agreement. And that's what maximalists tend to exhibit, is an absolute, a 100%, that nothing else matters. Bitcoin is the only thing that matters. And he even says blockchains have no use case apart from money. None. Zero. This is a dramatic shift in narrative from the early days of Bitcoin and blockchain, where people thought that blockchains were going to take over everything. I remember watching videos on YouTube in the early 2010s talking about how blockchains were going to innovate all the things. And here's somebody saying that it's literally just going to do one thing. Now, I think it will do that one thing, and it does it incredibly well. It is better money than what we've used before. But to say that blockchain will literally have one use case, just one, can you think of any other network technology that literally only has one use case? He gets challenged by this in the comments. And he basically says, well, if there are other use cases, they will be built on top of Bitcoin. It's valid. It's a good point. Genuine question. Is there really no application for blockchain other than money? Nope, sir. Takes hours and hours of learning to figure this out. I will counter. Land records. I can see a decentralized registry of land and property using blockchain. From Puru. If needed, will be built on top of Bitcoin. Again, there is no decentralized blockchain. That strikes me as very strange to say that there's really only one use case for blockchains. An incredible innovation. We only have one use for it. I agree that 99% of other things are going to go bankrupt, but there is a categorical difference between between an absolute statement and a statement of majority, right? Saying 99% of life will go extinct in a cosmic impact is totally different from saying that life will go extinct. Period. Full stop. 100%. Most things may have died when the cosmic impact that killed the dinosaurs happened, but it didn't kill everything, and here we are today. That is a categorical difference than if it had wiped out all life. In the 2000 dot-com boom, the vast majority of tech stocks died. Companies died. Everything crashed. But the ones that survived took over the world. I understand that Bitcoin is the big dog. It's crossed the Rubicon. It has reached the point of no return. I don't think it's the only one that's going to do that. I think there are going to be others that matter, that have a use. But certainly Bitcoin is going to be the big dog, is going to remain the dominant player, is going to remain the one that truly matters. Is there room in the dialogue for this kind of subtlety, this kind of nuance? Am I allowed to say that I agree 95% with somebody, or are they going to apply a purity test and I don't pass and I'm not going to be able to talk to them? They're not going to listen to anything I have to say. Oh, it's frustrating. From Kentama, distributed ledger technologies have broad utility. Not long ago, Walmart launched a DLT application for their Canadian supply chain operations. Avery Dennison is going to be launching a DLT for carbon product tracking soon. See, it doesn't make any sense to me to say that distributed ledger technology, or blockchains, whichever term you want to use, only have one use case, and it is, in fact, Bitcoin. They only have one use case, and that's money. And if it's money, then Bitcoin wins and everything else dies. Guys, I think there are going to be other uses. I can't think of any other network technology that literally only has one use case, one application. Can't think of any. Moving on. Celsius and Three Arrows Capital were massive Bitcoin whales. Now, you've all heard about Celsius. Have you heard about Three Arrows Capital? This was an investment group that is also facing huge liquidity issues. I haven't looked deeply into it yet, but suffice it to say, this is another institution that is going down as the price collapses and as we're seeing contagion. As Terra Luna goes down and Celsius faces losses with that then make Celsius go down, and then Three Arrows Capital faces losses that make them potentially go down. Celsius and Three Arrows Capital were massive Bitcoin whales. Do Kwon was a massive Bitcoin holder, and Terra depleting the Luna Foundation Guard Bitcoin reserves took Bitcoin PX down. Don't know what PX mean. Celsius and Three Arrows Capital liquidated in the same night by Tether. FTX was like 2 Terra Lunas in the same night. Massive pressure on BTC, and we held at 20K. We did. We've held at 20K. It did briefly go down below 20K, but it was like a blip real quick. Didn't stay down there, didn't close down there. We're currently at $22,429, up almost 4% on the day. Just in, MicroStrategy CEO Michael Saylor says this is an ideal entry point to buy Bitcoin. I tend to agree, and I have some dry powder set aside. I have some cash set aside for exactly this purpose. I intend to buy Bitcoin. I'm waiting for a specific point in my personal portfolio where I have a certain amount of Bitcoin, where my portfolio is measured in a certain amount of Bitcoin. I would like to hit a certain number. I haven't hit it just yet, but I am darn close. And I might regret not buying right now. I realize that is a possibility. Maybe I just need to bite the bullet and buy now instead of waiting for it to go just a touch lower, because I thought it might today, right? With the Fed making their new announcements, I thought it might drop down. It appears to have gone up just a little bit. So maybe this is truly the bottom. Michael Saylor says so, but also he's an eternal Bitcoin bull, at least fundamentally in the long run. So, take that with the tiniest grain of salt. I say that as a Michael Saylor fan. From Heidi, blockchain chick. Heidi has a crypto tips YouTube channel if you're interested in seeing what she has to say. One of the best times to purchase Bitcoin is when people think the market may never recover. I am starting to hear this now. And that is true. I heard this myself. I went to an event the other night, not a crypto event at all. It was a creative night. There were musicians and artists and all kinds of creative people at this gathering. And somebody mentioned that, like, oh yeah, talk to Austin. He's the Bitcoin and crypto guy. And a guy who is certainly not in the crypto space. He's a musician, an entrepreneur. He came to me and he's like, oh yeah, I've been hearing about this. Is Bitcoin dead? It was a very sincere question, totally ignorant, but very sincere. And I'm totally open to that exact kind of question. It's fair for people to be ignorant, right? People live their lives. We can't expect absolutely everybody to dig deep into the monetary history and reality of fiat currency and cryptocurrency and what the difference is and why Bitcoin is categorically different from everything else. And it's unreasonable to expect everybody to become an expert. I mean, it's a nice idea. I would like everyone to educate themselves, and ultimately we need that, but it's kind of an unreasonable wish. So this musician asks me, full sincerity, is Bitcoin dead? And I obviously told him, no, it is not dead. Bitcoin as a network is healthier than ever. It works just the same as it did yesterday. Now, the price measured in dollars has gone down recently, and that happens. It's a volatile asset as measured in dollars. But the actual utility of being able to send any amount of money to anyone in the world at any time with no third parties giving you permission or denying access, from fractions of a penny to millions or billions of dollars at the click of a button, that still works. It's stronger than ever. So, the market may never recover. When you hear that, you're probably pretty close to the bottom. And we're starting to hear that right now. This from another Twitter anon, a perfect system. Everyone I know is removing all their Bitcoin from exchanges. Everyone. In-laws, colleagues, even normie friends for the first time. Literal Bitcoin bank run. Feels like some exchanges are about to blow up. I hope that's true. We should be holding our coins in self-custody. The fact that so many coins are held in custody by third parties, by exchanges, by centralized services. I was saying this before Celsius went down. That is the systemic risk to the entire Bitcoin ecosystem. That's what could kill Bitcoin, actually. If it was normalized to keep your coins, and if most of the coins in the Bitcoin ecosystem stayed on third-party services, then they can be controlled by third parties who are subject to regulators. That, I think, is the greatest threat to Bitcoin. That's the existential threat, is third-party custodians. If those become the de facto norm for everybody to keep their coins there because it's easier and because they're better at it, then we got a problem. The future that Satoshi Nakamoto envisioned, the future that the cypherpunks are trying to build, that a lot of crypto-libertarian types would want, an independent system from what we already have, that becomes impossible if third parties are holding the vast majority of coins. Because that's a centralized service, and you can attack a centralized service if you're a government. In 2018, I gave a talk at the Institute for Crypto Anarchy in Prague about decentralized systems and what their strengths and weaknesses are. And prior to cryptocurrency, there were all kinds of decentralized networks, right? Like AA is a decentralized network, Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no board of directors of Alcoholics Anonymous who tell you how you can and cannot operate. The Apaches, the Apache Native Americans, were a decentralized tribe. They were not hierarchical in their society. There was not really even chiefs, so to speak of, as many other Native American tribes had. If you're interested in that talk, just search Austin Craig, Prague, Institute for Crypto Anarchy, the starfish and the spider. That was the topic that I was speaking on. You'll find it in a new tab. I am proud of that talk. It was a good talk. But my point is, centralized services, this is what I talk about in the talk, centralized services have very well understood vectors of attack. You know how to kill a centralized service. If something has a head, you cut the head off. But if something doesn't have a head, how do you kill it? It's not as easy, it's not as straightforward, it's not as intuitive. There are ways to do it, but it's not as easy. If we want Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency movement to survive, then it has to be truly decentralized. That actually matters. Moving on, Max Kaiser, who I said yesterday, I've got mixed feelings on. Max is definitely a kind of a self-appointed thought leader in the space. He's been around for a long time. He's seen things long before other people. He's done a lot of good. He's also really obnoxious, and I don't think he's the best ambassador in that regard. Even at Bitcoin 2022 in April, he comes out on stage. Was it this year or was it last year? He came out on stage holding a El Salvador flag. Oh, it was this year. I remember. And he just started screaming, "Bukele," which is the president of El Salvador, and he was just screaming it. Oh, so obnoxious. I wish he could be a better ambassador in that regard, but whatever. We have who we have. The community is what it is. Hopefully we can improve. The Saylor effect. 2020, Saylor takes huge position in BTC, has keen understanding and ability to educate, is unparalleled, and Forkcoin's BCH, BSV, from Roger Ver and Craig Wright, enter final death plunge. 2022, Saylor uses massive media presence to expose altcoins and DeFi as criminal. The DeFi, Lunaterra Cell, Ponzi schemes crack, and more than $1 trillion is wiped out in a few days. So this is apparently where we are now. Crooks like Novogratz and Raoul Powell go the way of Troy James. Yikes. Crooks like Novogratz and Raoul Powell. I mean, Novogratz obviously believed that Terra Luna would work. He got a dang tattoo. I don't think he would have done that if he'd planned on this being some kind of rug pull from the start. He actually thought it was going to work. I think we use the terms like crooks, Ponzi, fascist, grifter. I think we use all of those way too liberally. And guys, if you blunt a word by overuse, that word is no longer useful. When an actual fascist comes along, you can't use it to any effect anymore if that term has been used over and over and over and blunted out of effect. Think about that. Let's be careful what we accuse people of. A fair and honest disagreement is one thing. An actual lying, thieving crook, reserve those accusations for when you have an actual criminal on your hands. Anyway, back to the thread. Max Kaiser. Saylor told everyone that hyperinflation was coming. The, quote, melting ice cube. If you got stuck, it's on you. Saylor's MicroStrategy balance sheet is relatively unimpaired. As it stands, he doesn't get a margin call unless BTC trades under 3K. He's got room for another 20,000 on BTC. That's awesome. Having just blown up the hard forks and DeFi, he knows capital will flow into pristine Bitcoin. You know, I see these tweets that say DeFi is blown up, NFTs are dead. I think the Bitcoin maximalists are declaring victory prematurely. I think DeFi still has a place. I think NFTs are going to come surging back. Saying that blockchains have no place other than being money. Okay, how about this? Let's look at NFTs for a second. What is the use case for an NFT? Well, right now it's conspicuous consumption. It's, I have this high-priced JPEG of a monkey that just shows other people that I'm rich. It's basically like buying a Rolex. But because nobody goes out in the real world anymore, having a JPEG on the internet is actually a better way to flex, show more people how awesome and rich you are. Conspicuous consumption, like a Supreme brand sweatshirt or a Louis Vuitton wallet, or even, this is really a tangent, lawns, green lawns. Look into the origin of a grass green lawn. It was actually originally conspicuous consumption because it requires so much effort to maintain a pristine lawn. I'm anti-lawn, for the record. Going back, JPEGs, overpriced JPEGs as NFTs, that's the use case that we have now. But looking into the future, what is that technology going to be used for? Well, did you see Ready Player One, the metaverse, a gaming universe of universes with digital objects that you can carry from one universe to the next, from the Bored Apes other side metaverse to the Meta Facebook metaverse? Or maybe you want to play Fortnite, or maybe you're into, I don't know, maybe Snapchat has their own metaverse. If you want to carry digital objects from one proprietary universe to another proprietary universe to one managed by another group that's probably proprietary, how are you going to do that? Well, one way you could do that is with non-proprietary NFTs, non-fungible tokens, digital objects in the metaverse. That was very clear in Ready Player One, the movie. I don't know why people want to crap all over NFTs as a category and say that they are de facto useless. I think that conspicuous consumption is kind of a big eye roll, not really my thing. Certainly it's been a thing, though. It exists in meat space. People do that with physical products, Lambos, for whatever it might be. We're going to do that in the digital space as well. Fine, so be it. Not my thing, but it exists. But moving into the future, I think digital objects are just going to be synonymous with NFTs. Collectibles. Any digital object in the metaverse, the universe of universes, is probably going to be an NFT. So don't tell me it doesn't have any use case, or it's not going to exist, or it's dead, a dead technology. DeFi, similarly, saying that DeFi is blown up and dead, there's a categorical difference between something that's down hard, down 90%, 95, 99%, and something that's actually dead. Let's be careful with our language, folks. Okay. Done with Max Kaiser's threat. Moving on. From BTC Pins, quoting from the White House. I mean, it's not a tweet from the White House, but it's about the White House. White House, it is the patriotic duty for oil refiners to reduce gasoline prices. Jeez, that's such an eye roll. How do politicians do this? Do your patriotic duty and reduce your own profit. Guys, we're all trying to get by. Even the oil companies, believe it or not, and they're not going to voluntarily reduce prices because the White House says it's their patriotic duty. Get real. What fantasy land do you live in? Here, BTC Pin saying, I don't think Atlas Shrugged was intended. Atlas Shrugged, excuse me, I can read this. I don't think Atlas Shrugged was intended to be used as an operating manual for an economy. Have you ever read Atlas Shrugged? I did years ago. It is a monumental tome, and actually as literature, it's not great literature. It's not a great story per se. It is a tableau upon which Ayn Rand can share her thoughts and ideas and give basically long lectures in the form of character monologues on objectivism. And it is very effective at that, right? You come away with a very clear understanding of how Ayn Rand felt that markets should work and how they engage and interact with human nature. But I've definitely noticed that as well. There are definitely headlines that I see on occasion where it's like, dang, that is straight out of Atlas Shrugged. That is wild. That is bonkers. And finally, have you guys tried a DALL-E Mini? If you're not familiar with DALL-E, DALL-E is an image generating algorithm from OpenAI. OpenAI, a consortium of AI researchers founded by Sam Altman, former president of Y Combinator, and even Elon Musk was involved early on. They've created DALL-E. DALL-E is an algorithm that creates images based on a text input and is shockingly good at it. If you haven't looked at this, go ahead and take a look now. DALL-E, you have to get special access to it. It's in private beta. Not everybody can access it. However, this site has DALL-E Mini, the little brother of DALL-E, where anybody can play with it. This is how I made my thumbnail image today. I said, Jerome Powell kicking a can down an empty road. Now, I got the Jerome Powell part. It did not get kicking the can down an empty road. But I picked this guy right here and did a Jerome Powell nightmare thumbnail image. I played with it on a few things. How about a swole alien working out in the gym? There are a whole bunch of images that it creates. Barack Obama, presidential portrait of Barack Obama. It's fun and kind of nightmarish. Star Wars with the cast of Seinfeld. Come on, that's kind of fun, right? It's not crypto, but also you just got to enjoy other things every now and then. And AI is a fascinating area that is going to radically transform the world. If there's anything akin to the invention of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, all of these disparate technologies being synthesized into the breakthrough that was Bitcoin, if there's anything else comparable to that, it's AI. AI is doing wild stuff right now, and I think it's about to radically transform our world. I love the Cybertruck, so of course I did a Cybertruck DALL-E image. I asked it to make a Cybertruck with Daft Punk in Outrun style sunset. It missed the Daft Punk part. Maybe I need to retry again, but it did get the Cybertruck and the Outrun style. All right, team, that's what I got today. It's been fun. Markets are moving sideways. Keep stacking sats. We might be down for a while. That's fine. In fact, I would be totally fine, 100% fine, if we moved sideways at the low 20s on Bitcoin for a long time, because that would give me plenty of time to stack at a low value, a low cost, right? I want to lower my cost basis on the stack of sats that I have. And this is a great opportunity to do that. So keep stacking. We'll be back soon. Thanks, team. Bye.